You're listening to Thunder Quack Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Thunder Quack Podcast Network Thor Ragnarok Spoilercast. I am one of your hosts, Michael Cohen, and joining me on this Spoilercast for Thor Ragnarok are my co-host from the Disney Dad's Cartoon Afternoon, Kurtis Findlay.
Hi.
And the one of the hosts of Star Wars: The Saga Continues, and my favorite Star Wars and Arrow news hound, Tim Geraci.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Awesome. So we're here tonight, obviously, to talk about Thor Ragnarok, and how awesome of a movie it was. I hope that everybody agrees with that. And this is a spoiler cast, so heads up. This is going to be full of spoilers. We're going to talk about every nitty-gritty little aspect of the movie that we can cover in about an hour. So if you haven't seen, so you haven't seen Thor Ragnarok, now's the time to pause this podcast, go to your local movie theater, and watch Thor Ragnarok, and then you can listen. So, but before we do that, let's just take care of a little business. Obviously, if you're listening to the audio of this, you're one of our Patreon supporters, and we appreciate that. If you are watching this on YouTube and you really wish that you had an audio MP3 of this to listen to, you can do that by heading to patreon.com/thunderquack. Chipping in $5 or more, and you will get access to the MP3 of this video. Not a huge inconvenience, I think, to those who support us, or to those who don't support us, I should say. But just a little bit easier to listen to on the go for those who do support us. So we thank everybody who does support us over on Patreon, and you know, we've got all sorts of rewards over there. So head over to patreon.com/thunderquack to check those out. You can also head to thunderquack.com to check out all of the great podcasts in our network, such as Star Wars: The Saga Continues, and the Disney Dad's Cartoon Afternoon, as well as, you might want to throw in some Rebel Cells, the Star Wars animation podcast on top of that as well, if you're interested, or maybe Quiver the Green Arrow podcast. So those are our podcasts, and there's other stuff to listen to over there as well. Thunderquack.com, and if you want to pick up some merch, you can do that, store.thunderquack.com. Pick up t-shirts, cell phone cases, throw pillows, all sorts of really cool stuff over there. But let's get into it. Right off the bat, I want to get a 5-star rating from each of you. Tim, what do you rate Thor Ragnarok out of 5?
I'm going to go ahead and give it a 4 out of 5.
Nice, 4 out of 5. Okay, Kurtis, what do you think?
I think I'll also give it 4. Yep, 4 out of 5.
Nice. I'm going to go 4.5 out of 5. And the only reason it's not a 5, because I work from the 5 and then I deduct, right? So the only reason that it's not a full 5 out of 5 is because not enough Jeff Goldblum. Needed about 7,000% more Jeff Goldblum. But I'll take what I can get.
We just need the Grandmaster movie. That's what we need.
Exactly.
I thought you were going to say not enough Sam Neill.
I not enough Sam Neill either, but Jeff Goldblum's really the hot commodity as far as I'm concerned. But I loved it. It sounds like you guys really enjoyed it as well.
Oh yeah.
One other way to rank this is and I don't want to spend too much time on this, but where do you put it in the Thor movies? I think we'll all be unanimous on this. And where, just roughly, I don't need like a top 10 rundown or anything like that, but just roughly, where do you put it in the MCU in general? Because I'll say, like, in terms of Thor movies, I think this is far and away the best Thor movie, with the caveat that you have to be familiar with the character. So you have to have either seen him in Avengers or the other Thor movies in order for this movie to really be fun. I think that if this was your first Thor movie, you'd be a little bit confused as to like, who are those two guys that just got killed.
Yeah.
But in general, or not in general, specifically in regards to the other Thor movies, I think that this one, in terms of quality, stands just head and shoulders above the other ones. I don't even think it's a contest. The other movies are fun, but this one is beyond that. It is one of the most fun movies that I saw this year, and it's certainly the most fun tentpole movie, and one of the silliest and best MCU movies in terms of the comedic value. But for me, in terms of overall MCU, it's really tough to gauge. There's sort of the two classes, right? You've got you've got your Iron Mans and Captain Americas and Ant-Mans that are a little bit more on the grounded, realistic-ish side, as realistic as any of this stuff gets. And then you've got your Guardians of the Galaxy and this and even like Avengers, which goes a little bit more all out. So for me, I don't know. I definitely would put this up there with Guardians 1 and 2. Which I enjoy both of those quite a bit. But I don't know if I'd put this above Iron Man 3 is my favorite and maintains that spot. But I don't know if it surpasses Spider-Man Homecoming or not. I don't know if it even Cap Winter Soldier is still pretty high up there for me. But Thor Ragnarok, definitely one of the ones that I think I'll rewatch more than some of the other ones. But Kurtis, where does it fall for you?
Let's see. I'm not too sure. I don't know how it's going to be on rewatch. Because I think that a lot of it, the main thing that's great about this movie is the humor. So is that going to withstand time after time? I can watch action movies over and over again, but sitting down and watch a comedy over and over again is not something that I typically do. However, there's plenty of action, and it's got a rock solid story as well. So that gives it good points. I would place it near the top. It's definitely the best of the Thor movies, but there are some that I think I still like more. I think I'll always go back to the first two Captain America movies, the first Iron Man movie and first Guardians of the Galaxy as my go-tos. And that one, I don't know if Thor beats out those.
Yeah, for me, I want to say right now that it probably is my favorite of the Thor movies, but I really, really like the first Thor movie, and I haven't watched it in a while, so I kind of want to do it, watch the first Thor again, and maybe when Ragnarok comes out on Blu-ray, maybe watch all the Thor movies and see where those two, rank. But right now, I think I'm going to say it is the best Thor movie. But for the MCU, like you guys said, it's always hard to rank any new MCU movie that comes out. But I think I'd probably put it in my top 10, but it might be kind of in the lower end of the top 10, like maybe 10, 9, or 8, somewhere around there. Because there's a lot of MCU movies I really like. The Avengers is going to pretty much probably always be my all-time favorite MCU movie. Every time I rewatch it, it's like still blows me away how well done and they pulled this team up off before. It was such a unknown concept if that'll work, and they just knocked it out of the park. And I'm a huge fan of both Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Those are pretty high up there for me, and the whole Captain America trilogy, it would be in there, plus the first Iron Man. So yeah, I think I'd probably put it kind of in the lower top 10 of my favorite MCU films.
Nice. Cool. Let's get into a little bit of the plot. I'm trying to think of a different way to discuss this rather than us just kind of like going through beat by beat and talking about the movie. What new element, like what unexpected thing? Because people talk about the Marvel movies like, oh, they're all the same. And I hate that argument because I really don't think that Spider-Man Homecoming, even though, I mean, like, I know it's sort of almost like an appendage off the side of the MCU, but it's still MCU. So Spider-Man Homecoming, Iron Man 3, Cap Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, I don't see these as the same types of movies. Like, I think that they all share a lot of the same DNA, which I like that aspect.
Well,
but
for sure.
they all have their own identities, for sure. I know that there are a few that some people would argue Ant-Man is a little bit of a retread of Iron Man 1. And I don't disagree. There's some formula stuff that definitely gets reused. But
what modern action movie doesn't use the same formula?
Exactly.
Like whether it's DC or anything.
Yeah.
Jurassic Park.
Everything's just Star Wars with a different hat on, in my opinion, right? Like since 1977, that's what everybody's chasing, including now Star Wars. So like, that's not to say Star Wars is better than everything else, but it's like Star Wars set that tone, and everybody else is trying to match that ever since, right? So yeah, there's a bit of sameness, but there's sameness in all of these movies. But to get away from that conversation, let's talk about the thing in Thor Ragnarok that you feel like sets it apart. That's sort of your favorite element that really makes it unique. So Tim, what is it to you that made Thor Ragnarok awesome? That makes it a unique individual experience.
Yeah, for me, for what I really enjoyed about it, because I got to be honest, going into it, I wouldn't say I kept my expectations low, but I had them in check, because hearing the reviews for it saying like, oh, this is the funniest Marvel movie ever. And I was thinking, okay, we've had our funny Marvel movies like Guardians of the Galaxy, but I'm not sure how much Thor movie would work as being like, just a flat out comedy movie. But in the end, I felt it was, maybe a little more, but I think it was no more than over the top than any other MCU movie that we saw before. So I don't think that was an issue. But the thing that really sold me on the movie was just Hela as a character, the villain, and her backstory and how it tied into, being Thor's sister, the first daughter of Odin. I just loved all that stuff with her, and just the mythology, how it expanded that mythology for Thor and Asgard. I thought that was really cool. And this, how, Odin tried to cover it up, how they were just on a conquest conquering these different realms. It was just a really cool, backstory I wasn't expecting for the character to have. I was just kind of thinking she was going to, be a big threat, like a legendary villain from Tales from Asgard who's, rising up in power again, going to destroy it. But no, she had a deeper history and a backstory that I wasn't expecting. And I thought it worked really, really well. And
yeah,
if I had a nitpick, I would say not enough of her in the movie. I was kind of hoping we get more focus on her than maybe, I think we probably spent a little too much time on Sakaar, but I know there's a lot of great stuff. So it's even hard to say that in that sequence, but there was a part of me that felt I wanted to see more of Hela and her character and her interactions with Thor and all that. Yeah. So I would say her as a character and her backstory is what, really sold me on the movie.
Yeah, I agree. That was just a fantastic villain. And we haven't seen that kind of a threat in the Thor movies yet. They've been we always thought Loki was the big bad, and he's going to take over Asgard and stuff. But then you see that he is not. He's just the trickster. He's not actually a threat. And this movie, he wasn't a bad guy at all, really. And boy, did they get Hela right in in especially Kate Blanchett's portrayal of Hela. She was just downright evil, and it was excellent. It was so good. The costume
from the moment she popped on screen for the first time, you just knew she was a force to be reckoned with.
And I'm glad that they made the change from making her Loki's daughter to making her Odin's daughter, because I think that meant that that meant that she now overshadowed her siblings.
Yeah.
If she had come in and she was Loki's daughter, then Loki would have, I don't know, I think he would have been more evil, or he wouldn't have had the same attitude toward her that he did in this movie here. I think that was a smart move to make that change.
Plus, it sets up one of the best jokes that I feel in my theater, at least, was mostly overlooked, which is when Thor sits on the throne and she walks up and she goes, "You're in my seat." which is totally like anybody who's got siblings or kids absolutely knows that, like, the argument of like, hey, I was sitting there. That's my chair.
Hey, I'm the oldest.
Exactly. So like I felt like that was just like a really funny, like, not a joke for everybody, but like if you got that joke, it wasn't like a laugh out loud. It was like an internal chuckle kind of laugh. And I always like those kinds of jokes that it's like, oh, I see what you did there. It's very clever.
I also liked the fact that Thor went through this entire movie without his hammer, because I think that their accessories sometimes define the characters, and we've seen this done in movies before. Iron Man 3, Tony Stark was in that movie practically the whole time without his armor. In Civil War, Captain America was without his shield for quite a bit of it, and in this one we have Thor with no hammer. And can he still be Thor without that defining part of him? And yes, he can.
Yeah, it's kind of that third movie thing, right? It's like, well, we've got two movies that really establish this character. In the third one, let's deconstruct them. And and that's definitely Thor's journey in this one.
Right. Yeah, because they take him away from Asgard, they take him away from the Avengers, and they take him to a planet where he knows nobody, and they break him down to find out what he's really about. And the funny thing is that they did that while making it a comedy movie.
Yeah.
I think that was actually pretty bold. They took a lot of risks there, but they did a very good job. I was very surprised.
Yeah. I think so. For me, the thing that I really loved about this movie, that I think definitely sets it apart, I'm going to encapsulate it in two characters, and those characters are Korg and Meek.
Yes.
Yeah.
Korg, performed by the director of the film, Taika Waititi, and that's why I kind of encapsulated in them. There's a tone in Ragnarok that I think is very much Taika Waititi's voice, and I think that's appropriate that Korg is in fact voiced by that director, because if you've seen any of Taika Waititi's other films, I very recently watched Hunt for the Wilder People for the first time. And if you haven't seen that movie, I highly recommend it. It is so much fun. But there is like this great voice that he has in his films, this great vocabulary to it, and a pace that is very different from any of the other Marvel films. A lot of the Marvel films tend to actually be fairly slow and a little bit plodding until you get to the action. And so they're kind of these roller coasters, these up and downs, right? But Ragnarok it was sort of like this slow build at the beginning, but once we hit Sakaar, it really, if you start to think about it, like, it is just a joke every 30 seconds and action every couple minutes, and it doesn't let you stop and really take it in, which to me is a hallmark actually of Star Wars, where a Star Wars film has this great slow build at the beginning, and then once the adventure starts, it doesn't stop until the end of the movie, and then we have a great moment at the end of the movie. And I feel like that same sort of pacing, that same sort of beat was in this movie, but played not with the the frying pan into the fire, which is sort of that George Lucas, Steven Spielberg way of making a movie, but with the kind of like comedic timing of like a Judd Apatow film or something like that, where it's like you just don't get to stop. Like, and I think a lot of that comes out of the fact that it was improvised. There are a lot of jokes that really come off that way. One of the scenes that just kills me even just to think about it. It's one of the clips that they released beforehand, and it's definitely one of my favorite parts of the movies, is when Korg and Thor are preparing for the battle against Hulk, or they don't know that it's the Hulk yet, but they're like sort of underneath the arena getting their gear, and Thor's going through stuff, and Korg is like, you want this big three spike fork thing? It's like, yeah, I guess. Thor's like, nah. He's like, yeah, I guess that's only really useful if you're fighting 3 vampires at once and they're clustered very closely together. And it's like, that's funny. Like, that's a good joke.
Yeah.
But then Thor's like, I had this hammer and it was just the best. And he explains everything about his hammer. And he's like, I would spin it really fast and then I would just lift off the ground. And he was like, you ride the hammer? The hammer rides you. And it's like, it's just like joke.
Yeah.
And then it caps with one of the best moments in the entire MCU, in my personal opinion, where Korg goes, it sounds like you had a real emotional attachment to this weapon, and losing it is almost like losing a part of yourself. And then Thor's like, yeah, I hadn't really thought about it that way. That's really kind of beautiful the way that you put that. and then it's like, okay, now you guys got to go fight. Like, and that whole tone is so delicate. It's so difficult to pull off, to be that funny, and then really to like for the director of the film to state sort of the emotional thesis of the movie in the movie to the main character, and then the main character to be like, yeah, that's really poignant. It's almost like it could be a thumb your nose at the audience sort of thing, like or like a fourth wall breaking Deadpool joke, but it just rides the line. And there are a lot of parts in this movie where it just rides the line. The Point Break joke on the Quinjet.
Yeah, that's a good one.
We fought and I won easily, and Banner being like, that doesn't sound right. It's like, and Banner himself being like partially nuts. Because he was in the Hulk form for 2 years. I mean, like,
yep.
There are all these things that could push it just over the edge, but they don't. And then in the third act, when the battle between Hela and Thor goes down, and what happens to Thor, it's like it never, even though there are all these tonally different things in the movie, it never feels. Nothing ever feels out of place to me. It all feels like it's exactly where it's supposed to be, and this is all cohesive with the MCU, but Sakaar is a weird place, so let's get weird. Like it's okay. And Guardians, I think, laid the groundwork for that, for somebody else to be able to come in and be like, let's get a little silly with these movies, in a completely absurd way. But just like I'd say, like, this is why I say it all kind of centers around Korg and Miek. Those characters exemplify this idea that the movie just rides that line. Like at the end, when Korg is like Thor's like, Miek, what planet are you from? And Korg goes, oh, Miek is dead. I stomped on him during the battle, and I feel really bad about it. I've just been carrying him around since then. I'm not quite sure what to do. And then Miek wakes up, and you're like, what? What just happened? Like
yeah.
Like, you just destroyed me, because Miek is my favorite character from this movie, which is surprising considering.
Oh, never mind. What was the question again?
Yeah. And it's just like, you devastate me, and then you punctuate it with a joke, and I'm just like, okay, cool. And I'm so ecstatic that Korg and Miek are going to show up in the future. And I think that points towards Infinity War. But the fact that those characters are still around, and now they're part of the crew, so it's like we lost the Warriors 3, but we gained some new characters, and it's sort of like, okay, there's a cool balance there. Yeah, so that's really it for me. It's just that this movie, to me, more than any of the other MCU movies, it really breaks out of the cycle, even though it maintains that DNA in order to still be an MCU movie. It really sort of bucks that trend, which is great coming off of Spider-Man Homecoming, which I feel Spider-Man Homecoming is a great movie. With really great characters, and the plot's really great, but it leans into what makes the MCU, right? So it is very much Captain America or Iron Man or Thor again, right? It's that origin story. It's that same sort of thing. But this time it's a teenager and he's in high school, so that's what makes it unique. And it's got its own little quirks and stuff that make it fun, but it certainly doesn't challenge the, I don't know if I want to say the genre, because that's a little bit more bold than I want to go, but it definitely challenges the sensibilities of what constitutes an MCU movie and what can, in a way that I don't think anything has since the first Guardians of the Galaxy. And it does it again in the same way, but in a new, fresh way at the same time, which is crazy to me. So that's one of the things that I love the most about it.
It's almost like kind of, I know this is a DC word technically, like a rebirth over the Thor movie franchise, because it just felt like, we had the first 2 Thor movies. While they were hits, they probably weren't the biggest of the MCU. So it's almost like, take the things that worked in the first Thor movie, namely Thor, Loki, stuff on Asgard, but then, do a whole revamp of, some of the stuff that maybe didn't, maybe the Earth-based elements, Jane Foster and all that stuff. And even with the Warriors 3, getting rid of them so quickly, where if you blink, you miss that they're even part of the movie. Just, moving on from the past Thor movies and starting on this whole new adventure for the franchise that could be coming out of this. Like you mentioned, Mike, with Korg and Meek, like they could be part of the new, main cast of characters for the Thor movies going in the future. So I just kind of view it, but not only being something different in the MCU, but just for the Thor franchise in general, where it's, this can kick off, just more Thor movies that are kind of more in this tone and going in this direction that maybe we didn't think could go on for more than 3 movies if they were going on the same path that the first 2. So it's just, I think, a great, new state for not only MCU, but for Thor in general as a franchise moving forward.
Yeah.
I could see Korg and Meek helping kick off a new Hulk movie. Because they're Hulk characters, right? They're from Planet Hulk or whatever.
Yeah.
And pardon?
Yeah, I think so. I'm pretty sure that's
Yeah, they are.
And so I could see them and Bruce Banner having a great time on an adventure of their own. I think that'd be kind of cool. Because everyone, I don't think anyone really wants a Hulk movie, but if they gave the same sort of silly treatment, a comedy, well scripted, well made comedy, because Bruce, I loved Bruce in this movie. He was fantastic. I thought he was so great, and I would love to see another Hulk movie with that sort of thing in mind. Also, I want to say that this portrayal of the Hulk was really good as well.
Yeah,
I really like the stubborn toddler version of Hulk that you saw throughout the 80s. Kind of the Hulk has gone through so many different iterations, and I really like this one. And they did such a good job of making him kind of this tantrumy child Hulk rather than a monster Hulk.
And it makes sense too, like you said. It's kind of like Hulk's always been an infant, but now that Bruce Banner's been nothing but the Hulk for 2 years, it makes sense that he would act like a 2-year-old and get pouty and throw tantrums like you'd expect. So yeah, it was great, but it also made sense from a story perspective too. And I just liked, you mentioned the Bruce Banner stuff, how conflicted he was, or not even conflicted. He didn't want to become the Hulk again because he knew if he would transform one more time, that could be it for Bruce Banner. You may never see him again. So I just like that new element that we've known from other past Hulk stories from comics and all that stuff, but to see it brought into the MCU, I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
very
and
cool.
the in the third act when all hope seems lost and that Bruce is gonna have to pull the Hulk out and to help save the day, and he has his great Avengers hero moment. And you see the joke coming a mile away, so I'm not going to defend it on those grounds. But
I honestly didn't. I got to say, I was expecting it just to be, you knew Hulk was going to come out at this moment. Yeah. You knew he was going to fight and take on that big wolf. So I was just expecting him to jump down and then he would come and rescue or stop that wolf from attacking everyone. But when he just flat out hit the ground as Bruce Banner, I was busting up.
I just love that as the subversive anti-Avengers joke that it is, because he has that whole. The very campy you've been saying that I'm familiar and I'm gonna show you who I really am sort of thing, and he has this whole little mini action hero speech And she's like, okay. And he jumps out of the thing, and you're like, oh, here comes the Hulk. And then he just, then just this body just limply flaps again. It's like somebody threw a fish on the ground.
Yeah.
and it's just so like beautifully anticlimactic, and it flies in the face of what we would expect. It's the anti, like at the end of Avengers when Captain America is like, Hulk, smash, right? Like, which is such a great moment in that movie. But we've gotten so much of that over the last almost 10 years that now it's time to make fun of ourselves a little bit, right? And it just, they pull it off so well in that moment.
Yeah.
I love it.
That was great.
Kurtis, what for you makes Thor Ragnarok stand out?
I would say the fact that it was a couple of different movies in one. I don't think that sort of storytelling has really been done in the Marvel Universe yet, or the MCU yet, because we had a very distinct, here's the here's the Planet Hulk storyline, and then there's the Ragnarok storyline, and they dealt with them separately.
Yeah.
But all of the pieces interconnected at the same time. So it really didn't feel like two movies, but it was two very distinct movies with a completely different tone, a different look, a different aesthetic, everything, and but blended together so well. So I thought that was very unique. The sheer amount of comedy was unique as well, which made it enjoyable. I think it was like even more than a Guardians movie. And like Tim said, the villain, excellent villain. So those are the things that I think really stood out for me for this one that made it unique.
Cool. So we've talked about what we loved, and I don't want to be just, all positive all the time, just a total booster. So if there's one thing about this movie that you could have changed, what would it have been, Kurtis?
Oh boy, I don't know. Let's see.
You need some time to think about it?
Tim, do you already have an answer?
Yeah.
Okay, you go first then.
I kind of already said this before talking about Hela, but I do wish he was in a little bit more, and maybe just a scene, not even like a two of them, maybe just a sequence or just a few minutes off of something from Sakaar that could have been used for, just more interaction between Thor and Hela. That would have been really good, considering, they're both, brother and sister, and they just really only had two sequences throughout the whole movie where they were interacting with each other, at the beginning when she first appears, and then at the end when they fought. So I thought she could have been in a little bit more, just flesh out her story even more, just their connection with Thor, just to add a little more, I guess, dramatic weight to their fight at the very end. And I will say too, another negative is just how quickly they just, got rid of the Warriors 3 being, pretty big staples in the Thor franchise from the comics and stuff, and even in the movies too. And just the fact that they got killed without any lines, and then Thor doesn't even mention them at any point during the movie. like once they get to Asgard, like asking where they are, asking Heimdall where the Warriors 3 are at, or just kind of lament about their deaths at the very end while they're all on the ship together. So there's something to acknowledge how, like, he lost 3 of his best comrades, and no mention of Lady Sif either. Like, just a little line of dialogue saying she's off in another realm or something like that, but she was totally ignored. So those would probably just be the few nitpicks that I have about the film.
Yeah, I definitely have a problem with the way that the Warriors 3 were handled. I understand tonally that it was meant to be, like you said earlier, Tim, this signal that this is like the old Thor is gone, right? Those Thor movies, like everybody kind of picks on those. So just like they're done. We're not even going to talk about them anymore. Now we're going to move forward with this new tone.
Well, I think though it also signifies, like, they were the first people to get killed, and they're supposed to be the greatest warriors in Asgard.
That's what I was going to say. Is that right, I understand from a storytelling perspective that is supposed to be really, it
tells you how big the threat is without spending any time on it. Yeah,
but I would have enjoyed it more if those characters would have been with Heimdall. And that part of Heimdall's plan to save everybody would have involved the Warriors 3 facing off against Hela in that chamber, right? Because she busts that door down and then there's nobody there. And then, there's a few minutes, and then they end up going back to the palace in order to fight Thor. To me, it would have made a little bit more sense and been paced a little bit better if the Warriors 3 were there and we had just like a short action sequence where they sort of hold their own against her for a short time. And I think it also actually would have helped with the Executioner's storyline if he actually would have had to fight against them and would have contributed to their deaths.
Yeah,
I think that would have boosted him up a little bit more and made his redemption at the end of the movie a little bit more impactful. But yeah, for me, my biggest problem with Thor Ragnarok, and this is going to sound really weird because I really love Doctor Strange, and I loved that movie, and actually have, surprisingly, because I wasn't a big fan of Benedict Cumberbatch, really liked him in that. I feel like his performance in Thor Ragnarok was a little bit weird. Like it felt off. It was the one piece of the movie to me that was like, there was this weird tonal aspect to it where it was like, well, this doesn't jive with who I know this character to be. And the gag went on too long with him like warping from place to place. Right. It was just like, I feel like it was just about 5 times too many. And it never got back to that point of it being hilarious again, right? That Family Guy joke of like, we're going to keep doing this until it's funny again.
Yeah, there were a few moments I thought in the humor that got a little bit too Family Guy for my taste. Yeah. The spinning at the beginning was another one where it's like, okay, how many times is Surtur going to be interrupted?
Yeah.
Because that's the total Family Guy thing to do.
Yeah.
The fact that was right at the very beginning, and it helped establish the tone. I think you're right. It was out of place. It was a little odd, and it was too much.
Yeah, it was just a little bit too much. And I liked that he had a cameo. I liked that he. I like that they explain that now that Doctor Strange is in the universe and he interacts on this level with these characters, because being the master of the mystic arts, he's in their territory, right? So we have to address the fact that the first time Thor and especially Loki return to Earth, that now that Doctor Strange is the master, what's
Sorcerer Supreme,
the Sorcerer Supreme, that he has to deal with it. He has to police that for a second, right? So I like that idea. I just feel like his performance and the jokes were they were just a little bit incongruous with who I know that character to be from spending 2.5 hours with him in his own film. And I hope that that's not indicative of how he's going to be in Infinity War. Because in Infinity War, I want him to be a little bit more of a sage, sort of like a wise character that's going to bring a little bit of gravitas to the situation. That's my hope for that character, at least. And
I think that sequence went through some reshoots too, because there was like, I don't know if you guys saw some of those old set photos of where they're looking for Odin, and he's almost like a old hobo, just spewing nonsense, talking like a crazy person out on the streets instead of him directing him to that open green landscape there. So I wonder if they did a lot of reshoots for that entire Doctor Strange sequence as well, just reworking it all.
Yeah, I imagine that was all kind of part and parcel. But the one thing that I did really appreciate about Doctor Strange's appearance, it was the gloves. The yellow gloves, which sort of harken back to some of the more silly, weird 70s-esque aspects of his costume. I really enjoyed that. It was like, oh, that's cool. Like they didn't change his costume that much, but I like it when they give these little flares where it's like, well, these characters are living and they evolve, and they're not always gonna just show up in the same outfit. That they have sort of these evolutions. So Curtis, did you figure something out?
Okay, yeah. So I felt like there were a few. These are just so minor things, right? Mm-hmm. It's the humor. I think I mentioned already. I thought that Thor. There were times where Thor was funny the way Thor has been funny in the past is his sort of a little bit like not a little bit clueless about the situation that's going on.
The fish out of water trope. Yeah.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
I thought that he quipped too much like a Spider-Man in this one, and so I would have toned that back a bit. I mean, the lines were funny, but I thought that was quite a leap for Thor to now be like riffing on everybody and that kind of thing. I also was confused by the pure imagination, like the Willy Wonka reference right in the middle there when he was in that car. Like, I thought that was really out of left field. So maybe I wouldn't have included that. But yeah, it's just minor things like that. The rest of it was kind of nice. I actually thought that the animation on the Hulk was a little shoddy at times.
Yeah.
I thought that he moved much nicer in the Avengers movies. Yeah, there was something about him that just looked, I don't know, like 10 years ago, something like that.
Sure. I think that's partly by virtue of the fact that that he's in the movie so much. There's a lot more opportunity for the cracks to show.
Yeah,
it's tough. It's a tough thing. I mean, like fully CG characters. I know we've at this point been dealing with them on screen for over 20 years, but this just goes to show that when Star Wars does it, they are still leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else because
that is true.
Because even going back and watching The Phantom Menace and looking at Jar Jar and Sebulba and some of those characters, I'm not talking about their characters in the story. I'm just talking about visually. Some of those characters are still more believable than stuff in movies today. So it just kind of all depends on I think your director and I think the amount of time that they're spending on it. As effects heavy as this movie was, I feel like because Taika Waititi he's not an effects director, right? That's not really his wheelhouse. He's very much about the performances and the pacing and the story. I feel like out of all of the MCU films, this one might actually have some of the worst effects. There are a few
some
scenes.
Backdrops, they don't look that great.
Yeah, there are a few scenes where it's like, well, that's
scene.
very clearly green screened, right? So all that stuff with Odin is very clearly green screened. And that might be a virtue, like by virtue of it, the fact that that they were reshoots, they were under the gun, they didn't have time to really put the extra little bit of juice on that they needed in order to sell it. But even still, I think that throughout the movie there are a few places where the cracks show through. So yeah, I can see that. I want to see this again. Like, I really want to watch this movie again. I don't know that I'll be motivated to get out to the theater because we've got so many things coming up. It's just like sort of the rest of this season is jam-packed, obviously, with Justice League and Star Wars and even other stuff like Murder on the Orient Express, which I'm interested in seeing. And there's so many movies coming out. That winter has really become summer part 2. It's like we get this brief reprieve during September and October, unless you're a scary movie buff. That like you get to kind of chill for a little bit, and then November hits and Marvel kicks it off, and then we're right back into the thick of it. And then we get a little break in January, February before we got to get back into it in March with a Marvel movie follow. Although this year that's encroaching. Now it's in February.
Yep.
Black Panther's in February.
Yep.
Sooner or later, like there will be no break. And there will be a Marvel or a Star Wars or a DC movie every couple months.
The less breaks, the better, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, there are worse problems to have, right? These are real first world problems. But let's get into the future of some of these characters. The transformation that Thor goes through right at the end of the movie. Obviously, he unleashes his lightning abilities for the first time in the battle against Thor, but he doesn't fully unlock that potential until the battle with Hela. And then in that fight, he loses an eye, and by the end of the movie, he's got the eye patch. So it is interesting. We were talking about this earlier, how even though this movie is really funny, Thor as a character gets really broken down, deconstructed, and put back together as this new. He's almost a hybrid of Thor and Odin by the end of it, because he is now the king of his people, right? As they say, Asgard is not a place, it's a people, which they said like I think too many times, but they really hammered it home. But that character went through a real evolution in the film, and I'm just wondering how you guys see him moving into the future, especially in terms of Infinity War.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see not necessarily what happens to him in Infinity War. I'm more interested in what happens to him after Infinity War and the state of the Asgardians, because as we know in that first post-credit scene, they didn't get off to a good start on that ship. They're going to be facing with some dangers right away. I don't know if you guys saw that leaked Avengers Infinity War trailer from Comic-Con. If not, I won't say anything. But
I have resisted watching it.
Okay, I won't say anything, but we'll find out definitely the outcome of that, what happens after that ship, and what happens to Thor in Infinity War. And if I were to guess, I'd say pretty early on in that movie too. But assuming that, I don't think everyone's going to be killed in that, the rest of the Asgardians are going to be all wiped out. I would imagine maybe there's going to be a subplot in Infinity War, or maybe, because I'm assuming that ship is Thanos, and I think they confirmed it, if I'm not mistaken, that that was the ship that intercepted them in the post-credit scene. So maybe Thor and a few other Avengers and other characters will go on that ship, try to rescue the Asgardians, and take them down and back to Earth, and have that become like a new Asgard for them. So I'm really curious and excited to see, if we get more Thor movies down the line, just that aspect of home, or Earth being the home base for Thor and Asgard now, and just what that'll mean for him and as a people. So I find that to be really interesting. So not so much what he's going to go through Infinity War, because I just think, it's going to be a team up with the rest of the Avengers and other characters. It's just a matter of, what mission they're going to go on to defeat Thanos. So just what happens after that, I think is going to be really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just really interested to see how he's going to interact with the rest of the Avengers with what he's been through. And with this new responsibility, right? I think that's going to really, and keeping in mind that he's been gone, and that in the meantime, everything in Civil War has happened, and he's going to arrive back on Earth, with some urgency, I think, and look to unite the Avengers, and find that they've actually sort of been spread to the four winds, and it's going to be a little bit more difficult than he thought. My hope is that with this new responsibility and leadership role that he's taken on with the Asgardians, that transfers into the Avengers, and that Thor is in fact the one who, because the threat is Thanos, and it is so much larger than any of the threats that the Avengers have faced before, that Thor is going to have to be the one to really lead the team in this scenario. Because I think one of the biggest complaints that people have about Thor in relation to the Avengers is that he's just kind of there. Right. He, especially in Age of Ultron, he goes off on his own, and we know the whole history of the deleted scenes and all of that. But I think that they have an opportunity to really bring him in and have Tony and Steve still working through the issues of Civil War along with a lot of the other characters, and Thor come in and say, like, look, my dad just died. My people were just basically wiped out. My entire planet is gone. Can we just get along? Like why can we not just be friends? Like, what's the problem? Like, you guys are mad because some of you have superpowers and don't want to work with the government? Like, what does that mean? Right? So I think that's an interesting angle for them to hopefully attempt.
In the comics, Thor After Ragnarok, I think this is in J. Michael Straczynski's run on it. After Ragnarok, there's just a handful of Asgardians left.
Yeah.
And they rebuild. Thor creates a new Asgard in Oklahoma. And so I could see bringing it back a little bit, back to Earth, and this would be another deconstruction.
Yeah.
But deconstructing Asgard, can they really make a home for themselves on Midgard? And then I think in the comics also Tony Stark eventually takes what they've built and builds like a city that floats in the sky over Oklahoma, and he calls it Asgardia. So I could see there's definitely some potential to follow what the comics have done.
Yeah.
And see where it goes from there. My theory has always been that after the trilogies, we're going to get all new set of actors playing these roles. So, and not necessarily like replacing the actors, but just taking over as the flagship character. So, if Chris Hemsworth still is Thor, quote unquote Thor, but in the Odin role, and we bring in another person to take up Thor. I mean, in the comics, it's Jane Foster, but I don't think anybody really wants to see that happen in the movies.
Yeah, no.
But you know, we could have another Thor. We can get an Eric Masterson in here or something like that, and then and get Liam Hemsworth to play him or something like that. You know, and then like Falcon takes over as Captain America, and we get a new Iron Man and all this kind of stuff. So that would suit what's happening with Thor's character, I think.
Yeah.
For a new trilogy.
Yeah, I would definitely love to see that, you know, and for them to actually title a movie The New Avengers, and have it be, I could see like Valkyrie, because I think that she was a really great character. We haven't even mentioned her. I think that was a failure on our part because she's a great character. Yeah. I think that a brand new character introduced into this movie that keeps up with all of these characters that we've come to really love over the course of this franchise. I would love to see her take on that role as you know, Thor moves into that Odin ruler type of position. That Valkyrie is the one who has to go out with the Avengers to actually do the fighting. And then, like you said, Falcon becoming Captain America. I think that they really need to introduce characters like Riri Hart in order to become characters like Ironheart and that sort of thing.
Totally.
And you've already got Spider-Man, and he's going to be wearing the Iron Spider suit in Infinity War, and so that's like a great opportunity, like continue the evolution of that character, or even bring in Miles Morales at some point. But yeah, and I think having a character like Hawkeye kind of be their wise old mentor, like sort of their babysitter. Could be really fun. So something in that tone. But this is obviously far into the future. This is the sort of thing that we would be talking about post Infinity War, and then whatever Infinity War Part 2 has turned into, because Infinity War was originally going to be a 2-part movie, but the first half of it is Avengers Infinity War, and the second half is still untitled. But has changed somewhat, apparently. So we got to kind of see what that looks like before we can really start predicting anything.
Now that we have Valkyrie, we actually have a good number of the actual Defenders, like not the Netflix Defenders.
Sure.
But if we could have a movie that was Valkyrie, Doctor Strange, and the Hulk.
Yeah.
And call it Defenders and give it the movie.
Yeah.
And that'd be kind of awesome, I think.
I think the biggest wrinkle to throw in all of this, which is very topical and of the moment, so it's going to date this spoiler cast for sure, as if a spoiler cast for Thor Ragnarok doesn't already. But you can tell exactly when we're talking about this. The rumors right now that Fox is in talks with Disney for basically a studio buyout. And that's to say Fox itself I don't think is going to be bought out by Disney, but the rumor right now is that they're talking about, okay, movie properties, all of their movie production and distribution moving over to Disney. That would mean, of course, the rights.
Planet of the Apes.
Yes, Planet of the Apes, the most important part of this whole conversation.
Well, was there something else?
Yeah. So that would mean the Fantastic Four and the X-Men, with a handful of other characters that are associated with those characters, being able to rejoin the MCU. And to be honest, I mean, like that is a beautiful golden scenario that only comes around every once in a while, like Disney buying Star Wars, buying Lucasfilm. Disney absolutely has the money to do it, and this is the best case. This is the most likely case for us to see the X-Men and the Fantastic Four rejoin the rest of the Marvel Universe on screen.
Fox must be in pretty bad shape then if they're making this deal, or if they're in talks with this deal, because they have so many movies like in production and like TV shows on the go right now.
Yeah.
They just must be in terrible shape.
Yeah, well, Fox is in terms of lifespan, it's actually a very young company compared to the rest of the players, Warner Brothers and Marvel and Disney. So
not that much younger though. I mean, they were doing. Fox is one of the big studios from the golden age, like the 20s and 30s.
Fox?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Fox goes way back.
I think that as of late they sort of overextended, as much as they've had success with Deadpool and Logan, I think that some of the other stuff that they've done in their film and television areas have not been big successes. So I see this happening. I think that there's a possibility that this is real, and if it is, it's going to change future plans. It's the sort of thing that it's funny, we find out about these talks as they are coming to a close, but if this is really happening, it's something that Marvel and Fox, or Disney and Fox I should say, have been working on probably for the better part of the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
It takes that long for a plan like this to come together. And that means that the restructuring of Infinity War and the timing of that is a little suspect. that perhaps Disney knew that this was in the offing, and that Infinity War Part 2 might actually be, to use a DC term again, a rebirth of some sort.
Right, bringing us into Phase 3.
Yeah, because I know it'll be Phase 4 at that point.
Phase. Well, yeah, we're already in.
We're in Phase 3. Yeah,
Phase
so
3 right now.
Phase 4 could very well be what I hoped and dreamed it could be, which is that at the end of Infinity War, I mean, when you've got the Infinity Gauntlet, you have the ability to remake everything.
Yeah. And which we now know too, the one Odin has was a fake.
I love that moment.
Yeah,
that was a great little
so good
nod to us there. Yeah.
And that at the end of Infinity War could very well be a universe altering event that places us in a new soft reboot version of the MCU, with a lot of the characters that we know and love, with their stories mostly intact because moviegoers are easily confused. But we can then throw in the X-Men. So my dream of everything happening, and then our characters waking up in a world where like and one of those characters is in Westchester and wakes up after everything and is like, what just happened? And a hand comes down, helps Captain America up, and it is Scott Summers in what we know as a Cyclops uniform, not something inspired by Cyclops, but like straight up 90s Cyclops, fully realized for the screen. And then like that's our post-credits scene, is like, holy crap, the X-Men are part of the Marvel Universe again, because they've got Spider-Man, bring back the X-Men and the Fantastic Four, and the Marvel Universe is intact again, right? So
yeah, that'd be good.
See, I don't even like right now at this point dreaming about that because it all sounds so great. We've all been wanting it so long.
It's not fair. Yeah.
Like we're closer than we've ever been now, but I'm still, not getting my hopes up just yet.
I can't say anything. Yeah, it's not finalized.
We live in a world where we get a Star Wars movie every year. And if you had asked me 10 years ago if that was going to be a reality, I would have said not on your life. Yep. So anything is possible. And I'm gonna keep hope alive. I have to, because the DC universe is in such shambles. This is all I have. Star Wars and Marvel is really it. So I have to hold on to that faint glimmer of hope that Luke's gonna ignite his green lightsaber in The Last Jedi, and the X-Men can be on screen with Spider-Man and the Avengers. I have to believe that that's possible. But cool. Well, I think did you guys have anything else that you wanted to add before we wrap things up?
The one last thing I'll say is how much I loved the beginning of the movie. I got to say, I was not expecting to start off that way with Thor and down in the underworld with Surtur. Yeah, and I was expecting him just to show up at the end, but I just loved that action sequence. It was, the main draw of the movie was the Hulk versus Thor fight, but my favorite action sequence was that beginning. I just loved the way it was shot, the direction of throwing Thor's hammer, Mjolnir around all those creatures and just going back to them. Just the action beats were really cool, and just visually, I just loved the look of it. And when that dragon came out and Thor just flying in the sky with that dragon chasing him, I just loved the scenery and everything. That great, fantastical feel that it had was something. I didn't think the movie was going to start off that way with a bang, and I was like, once that was over, like, oh man, I can't wait to see what's next. But I just thought it was a great way to kick off the movie, and just something I wasn't expecting. I just love that whole sequence.
Totally. Kurtis, final thoughts?
On the Grandmaster's Tower, we never really even talked about the Grandmaster all that much, which he was great. But on the Grandmaster's Tower, we see at the head of Beta Ray Bill. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping that he shows up, maybe even in an Infinity War movie, because I like Beta Ray Bill. He's pretty cool.
Nice. Cool. I mean, I loved it. I love this movie. I think that it's a sign of really great things for the MCU, and that Kevin Feige and Marvel and Disney are willing to take some chances when the formula is right. And so all the people who have negative things to say about, the MCU is just all the same things over and over again, or want to complain that Edgar Wright should have directed Ant-Man and that would have been a better movie if he had, it's a studio system, it's a major conglomerate, corporate structure that you have to deal with. But Thor Ragnarok proves that you can be an auteur, you can be a visionary, and you can still work within what, and I think James Gunn already did that, but Taika Waititi knocks it out of the park and proves that you don't have to lose your voice just to work on one of these properties. You can maintain that and still make something that's part of the machine. And I think that he deserves a lot of credit for pulling that off so well. So, I love it. I'm excited to watch it again in the future. I'll get the 3D Blu-ray and enjoy the crap out of that. And I'm just glad that these movies are still fun almost 10 years later. It's
No
just
kidding.
where it's sort of an embarrassment of riches, right?
Yeah.
That we even take the time to nitpick the things that could have been better is almost futile, because we should just be thankful for what we're getting.
Totally.
Okay,
Cool.
one last quick
sorry.
plug here.
Go ahead.
My brother Eric, he co-hosts on the Epic Marvel podcast sometimes.
Yeah.
We are watching one MCU movie a month until Avengers 4, which we have to do. We had to start last month in order to get them all in before Avengers 4.
Nice.
So, which is in 2019. So we watched Iron Man last month, and we're gonna watch the Hulk this month, Incredible Hulk, and then carry on in chronological order, one per month. And we're going to be live tweeting while we watch. So keep your eyes open, either on my Twitter feed at Kurtis Findlay, or I think I'll post on the Epic Marvel Podcast Facebook page as well. If you want to join in and watch at the same time as us and tweet along with us, we would appreciate the company.
Awesome. That's a really cool project. So I hope that people take advantage of that opportunity and watch along. Cool. Tim, you got anything you want to plug?
Just normal stuff. Star Wars: The Saga Continues.
Yeah.
Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Star Wars TSC, where we do most of our social media interacting on there. So, and you can follow me at TimG311 on Twitter, where I talk about Star Wars, Marvel, DC comics, pretty much all these nerdy stuff that I'm into. So you can check me out over there on Twitter.
Awesome. Well, you guys can follow me on Twitter at ArkwUlf, ARKWULF. I just want to do a real quick plug for Movember. I am growing out the stash in honor of Movember and Men's Health Awareness. It's a cause that I think is a good one to support, and it's a nice time to sort of call out some of this stuff and get a little bit educated on our own health as guys, and on how we can help the men in our lives lead better, healthier lives and be a little bit more conscious and vocal about our health, especially our mental health, which is something that men tend to avoid talking about because they're scared of looking weak, or like a puny banner, to tie it into the movie. It's okay to be a puny banner every once in a while. You don't need to be the Hulk all the time. And I think that that's something we can take away from Thor Ragnarok. You got to get those emotions out every once in a while. But if you want to support me during Movember, you can do that by heading to mobro.co/ArkwUlf. That's ARKWULF. And chip in. Anything helps. We've got a couple people already who've donated $1 or $5. But even $1 helps. Every penny that we can get goes towards some really great causes. Prostate cancer research, men's mental health awareness, just all sorts of great causes. Such a great movement to be a part of. And I really hope that that those listening help and support. And for those of you who do, if you do donate, tweet and let me know that you donated, and I'll put your name into a raffle. And at the end of November, I will be giving away one illustration, one custom commission, to one person who donates. So nice. That's just to sort of show my appreciation for those who can make that monetary support, or just help spread the word. That's also great. So I'll be talking about that all throughout November on all of the Thunderquack channels that I'm a part of. But I just thought I would drop that here right now and let everybody know about it. Of course, you can also check out all of our great podcasts at thunderquack.com and find links to everything over there. It's the easiest way to find out what we're up to. And thank you guys for your support, even if it's just listening to this on YouTube. Like and subscribe, share it with a friend, And if you're a Patreon supporter, we love you guys. Thank you so much. You make it possible for us to do this stuff. And we wouldn't have the network that we have without the support of you folks. So thank you for that. Thunderquack.com, patreon.com/thunderquack, and store.thunderquack.com to support us. That's it for the Thor Ragnarok Spoilercast. Thank you, Kurtis. Thank you, Tim, for joining me. And we will see you very soon. Very, very soon. We're getting caught up on all of the missed months. In fact, within a week, you will have a Stranger Things 2 Spoilercast featuring myself, Amanda Conkin from Quiver the Green Arrow podcast, and a first for an official Thunderquack appearance, my wife Crystal. We're going to talk about Stranger Things. So that is something. Hurry up and
finish season 2.
Yeah, you better finish season 2. Yeah,
it's
so good. So look forward to that. Thank you guys for listening to this, and we will catch you on the next one.
See you next time, everybody.
Goodbye.